What is going on, and welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Sean Barnard as usual, and we have some more intel on the James Harden situation and the potential outlook from both the Sixers and the Clippers' point of view. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski recently pulled back the curtain and provided a little insight on what the holdup is between these two teams and why we might be in this for the long haul. I'm here to break down his comments in this video, give my takes on why I think this is a big deal and what I ultimately think could happen from here. Now, before I fully dive into it, I want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 85.2% of you guys watching this video have not subscribed to the channel just yet. We have plenty of big plans as the season is rapidly approaching, so I want each and every one of you a part of the journey right here with me. So make sure you're clicking that subscribe button, ringing that bell so you're not missing out on any content, and I will continue be ripping out the best content possible from my point of view all throughout the season. So thank you guys for tuning in so far, and I'm ready to dive into today's topic, which is of course the comments by Adrian Wojnarowski on the James Harden situation. I'm going to begin by starting with this quote right here, and this from Woj, which was on ESPN's NBA Today, and Woj said, quote, "Daryl Morey's motivation is whatever he gets from the Clippers. He wants to be able to flip that for another all-star level guard that he could replace James Harden with. This thing may be slow going well into the season." And in a couple of these quotes, I have four of these that I want to break down specifically on the topic of conversation here, but what that means from Wojnarowski's perspective, or what this means from Daryl Morey's perspective that Woj is reporting on, is we are in this for the long haul. That there may be a situation which is calling for where it's kind of a take one step to get to another, to get to the eventual trade destination. That may be the brutal reality of what these Sixers are looking at. And the biggest roadblock in all of this is that it's very clear Daryl Morey wants to replace James Harden with a player of equal talent, or at least a player that can help him have a chance of winning now. There's just not another all-star guard available right now. And that's the hard part of this trade market, that at this point in the year, each team is locking in and focused on getting ready for their season. Now, is there a world where the season kicks off and a team is underperforming, or a team is off to a bad start and they decide maybe this isn't it? Could it be a team like the Chicago Bulls if they start 3-7 in the first 10 games and all of a sudden look around and say, well, we're paying Zach LaVine $35 million. We got DeMar DeRozan on the books for a pretty penny. Maybe it's time to just blow this thing up. Let's take a try with James Harden, see what that looks like. At least that's a change of pace. Maybe, but is that a guarantee either? Absolutely not. So maybe there is some logic to this concept of kind of sidestepping a deal, loading with a package of picks, and then pursuing the eventual goal. That seems to be the goal with a Clippers deal. That seems to be why there's such a holdup on draft picks, things like that, and I'm going to touch on each of these points moving forward. To jump into quote number 2, and this was especially interesting to me, is Woj was asked about what if Harden is still on the Sixers. And Woj's quote is, quote, "I think the belief is around the Sixers, around James Harden, that his motivation to engage, to contribute at a high level to this team is going to be built around this hope, or his belief that there's traction in a trade to the Clippers." This quote concerns me here. If the bet by the Sixers is that if James Harden is still here, he's going to be playing at a high level and trying his best on the court, I'm not sure if that's a gamble that I would be willing to take. And that is my greatest fear in all of this, in this entire situation, is it's so strange to me how these Sixers are kind of just taking the mindset of letting this play itself out. That James Harden is now in the building, he's playing with the team, he's participating in training camp. Let's just let the water flow under the bridge and hope things heal itself. I don't think that's a safe bet for James Harden, for who he is as a person, for what his track record is, for how he's handled these types of situations. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think there's a world where James Harden gets very frustrated with the lack of traction in a deal and all of a sudden starts to turn back to, let me cause havoc, let me make as big of a deal as possible and blow things up until I am out of the city of Philadelphia. That is on the table. That is not out of the question. So that is my concern with just kind of letting things go smoothly. Now, could there be some communication behind the scenes between Daryl Morey and James Harden where he's saying, look, I've had these topics, I've had this offer, we're waiting for this, we're still bought in on trying to get you to a destination that you desire, we're just waiting for the proper offer? Sure, that's possible as well. But based on the track record of this offseason, on the level of communication between Harden and Morey, do I feel good about those odds either? Not really. So as much as I understand the logistics of this, I do wish there was a little bit more of a proactive approach from the Sixers in making sure that you're doing damage control ahead of time for James Harden. Now, to get back to the deals itself, I want to jump into 2 more quotes from Woj here. Here's one here, and it says, quote, "The asking price this time of year for the players you might like to get back to replace James Harden is going to be really high. So there's not great motivation in Philadelphia necessarily to think that a deal with the Clippers now gets them the best value they can, the best player who might be available later in the year. And that's why this may play out over time, especially if the Clippers are not going to up their offer and include a Terrence Mann in the deal, who has been off the table in these talks so far. See, that right there indicates to me the Clippers are not serious about making a trade happen. And from their perspective, I understand it as well, that the Clippers are looking at this saying, we are the only team in the NBA bidding for James Harden right now. Why would we keep digging into our stash of goods and trying to up the offer when there's no competition? It's going to take another team sweeping in or getting involved for the offers to begin to increase. And if Terrence Mann is the point where the Clippers are drawing the line for James Harden, they're just not that serious about trading for him. I like Terrence Mann. He's a good basketball player, but there are zero universes in which Terrence Mann is in the stratosphere of James Harden as a basketball player. If the Clippers are not willing to include a rotational wing guard player in Terrence Mann for a guy who led the NBA in assists last year, who is a 20-10 guy still at this point in his career, and a guy that fits on your roster, they're just not serious about making it happen. Now, is that okay? Not when James Harden specifically wants to be traded there, but this is a point where you have to kind of look at it from their perspective as well, that they do not want to overextend themselves and put themselves in a bad position. And that's why this time of year is so difficult, that regardless of what the negotiations are, regardless of what the outlook is for all these guys, the schedule is right ahead of us. That basketball is right around the corner. We have just over a week until we're seeing real NBA basketball. So there is a time aspect of this. The Sixers don't want to enter the season with this going on. The Clippers, if they want to make this deal happen, one would think they would prefer to have it handled before the actual season. Now, the Clippers are a team that have very much taken the outlook of the regular season does not really matter at this point in time. Kind of the Miami Heat of the West, except the Heat actually get it done in the playoffs, and the Clippers have underperformed year in and year out. But from a regular season standpoint, that they're cool with load management, they're cool with making sure their guys are at their peak for the playoffs. This strategy has not worked out for them, but it is a reason why I think they would be willing to drag their heels in these negotiations. Now, the final quote that I wanted to play here, or read here from Woj once again is, quote, "It keeps the Clippers from saying, listen, we're not giving you 2 future first-round picks for a player in James Harden who might just be a one-year rental for us," Woj continued. But you're the Clippers, and you go, we know we've made the best offer for James Harden. There's not a great James Harden market out there. So that's why this thing is going to be slow well into the season. That is the concerning part. That the Clippers, I do think, are more willing to drag their heels than I think Daryl Morey initially expected. That I think Morey had the outlook and expected that the Clippers would be on the same page with wanting this handled ahead of the regular season. I think the Clippers are more so playing the balance of saying, it's way more likely that internally this just combusts and James Harden goes on a burn the world down tour and that lowers his market than it is that he plays himself into a higher market or a higher price tag. And to be honest, I think that's probably the right outlook on that from their point of view. That I do think that is much more likely that James Harden gets sick of there being no trade, that he starts to cause a stir both in the media, but how he's handling things. Let's not forget that if you circle back to the first time he demanded out of Houston, and by the way, I give James Harden a pass for this one. I think that was a fine time to force out. I think it had run its course. There was not going to be a championship happening in Houston, that there weren't the proper pieces around him, and he got close, that he did go to a Western Conference Finals, that he did push the Warriors to 7 games. It just did not happen for the Rockets. But let's not forget when he forced himself out of the city in that situation, he didn't do it right away. He made it publicly known that he wanted to be traded. He turned down a ton of money in a contract extension, which at the time would have made him the highest paid player in the NBA. He turned down that offer. He showed up to training camp. He participated. He played the first handful of games with the Rockets and balled out. He had 40 and 15 games. He was playing like the MVP caliber player that he was at this point in time. And then when there was no traction, that's when he began to open up to the media, say, I don't know what more I could do to put this organization in a position. I think this has run its course. I don't see an outlook where I can take this team to a championship. And then lo and behold, he eventually was traded to the Brooklyn Nets for a haul of things, a big trade that ended up happening. That is kind of the biggest, I guess, leverage point that I think people get lost in. The ultimate leverage is having the player that the other team wants. In this situation back then, it was clear the Nets wanted James Harden. The Rockets had him, so the price tag was the price tag. At this point, James Harden does not have the demand that he did at that point in time. That there are notable knocks against this guy's reputation, both as a basketball player and as a guy you want in your locker room. This is the third team that he's now forced himself out of. And while I understand he feels like he was wronged, and it's clear that there is a little bit of a fractured relationship between James Harden and Daryl Morey, that does not make it okay to handle things in the way that he's handling things. It does not make it okay to publicly call the Sixers president of basketball operations a liar at a camp in China and as publicly as you can possibly make it. That does not make that okay. It does not make it okay to just miss media day, to miss the first day of training camp. These are things that sticks to a guy's reputation, especially when this is not the first time that he's done these things. To pair that with a player that is already regressing as a basketball player, that yes, he still led the NBA in assists. Yes, he was still capable of having 2 40-plus point performances in the playoffs. James Harden is a very good basketball player, but he's not a guy that is perfect anymore. He's not a guy that is one of the top 5 most elite talents in the NBA, at which he was at a point in time. So there has been some regression in these areas, and when you add this baggage to it, it puts the Sixers in a difficult spot. So with Daryl Morey continuing to sit, to want to win the deal, to want to put these Sixers in the best possible position, there's really not that much room for upward growth from a James Harden. That this has kind of run its course. The Sixers have tried this. It has not worked. We are at the exact same place that we were before James Harden got here, before Doc Rivers got here. The second round is still a hurdle the Sixers have to find a way to clear. Getting a player in the trade for James Harden that can ultimately help you reach this is the only way it's a win for the Sixers. With that looking less and less likely, it's a concerning spot for the franchise. As all these reports are indicating, it feels like we're in it for the long haul. I think we're unfortunately going to face the reality of what happens when the regular season rolls around and there has not been a James Harden trade. That is something that we are going to now find out the answer to. It seems like unless somebody swoops in and makes a significant offer, regardless, I will be breaking things down for you guys every step of the way. Thank you guys for tuning into this video. Drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Give me your overall James Harden trade package prediction, what you think the ultimate deal will happen, if it is the Clippers that steps up, or if you think there's another team. The Miami Heat have been a team I've been banging the drum for personally that I think makes sense to get involved from a trade perspective. I think it's likely a 3-team trade no matter what, but let me know your thoughts in the comments. Once again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell for the content, for all the content, and I'll make sure I'll be talking with you next time. Peace.